Good morning, everyone. It's Phil Wade from Dalton Wade Real Estate Group, and today I'm joined with Talia,
Good morning.
Chantel,
Good morning.
and future realtor
Mason.
Mason. Alrighty. Well, thanks for coming by, and if you're tuning in on Periscope, thanks for watching. So today we're going to be chatting about the home inspection. You know, it's an important part of the buying process for home buyers, and something that sometimes every realtor dreads, because you never know what's going to come out of it, and sometimes it can your deal. So so we're always looking to kind of make sure that whenever possible that doesn't happen, and so how can we actually do that? One way, so the home inspection starts actually before the home inspector arrives. It starts when you're showing your client the property, and the idea, and we talk about this in the Dalton Way training, is that when you're looking at the home with your client, you're looking for things that might come up or will come up in the home inspection, so that you've already informed your client that these are potential issues, and you factored them in when you've made your offer. So the home inspection is not to sort of renegotiate the deal. That's not its purpose. Its purpose is to help the buyer understand the home better, and really to kind of make sure there are no safety issues. And if there are sort of defects in the home, potentially those would kind of come out at that point. But the more of those things you can point out to your client when you are before the offer is accepted, the better chance of success, kind of getting through the the home inspection. So so you want to prepare your buyer prior to the home inspection, and that starts again, as I said, when you're showing them the home, that you've looked at the roof, you've looked at the electrical box, you've looked. Yeah.
When you're placing an offer and
Yeah.
you're taking into account things that you've seen in the house,
Yeah.
seller know this is why you're placing this offer this way.
Yeah, you could speak to the listing agent and kind of
Mm-hmm.
tell them whether or not that actually matters to them or their client. Is hard to know. I mean, kind of the rule of thumb, I mean, when something's relatively new on the market and it's listed at, we'll just say, 219, they're not looking for 180,000. They would have listed their property at a different price, and so they're probably looking, in their minds, at least right at that time, pretty close to within 10,000 of sort of the of the list price. I mean, and again, if in this market where it's very seller favorable, there's a lot of buyers, things are selling at list or above list sometimes. If your clients think, like, lowballing, is not a successful strategy to buy a house right now. And unfortunately, again, that's education of your client. I mean, it's human nature, and the buyer mentality sometimes is, if I start low, I'll get it for less. But a good listing agent, what's going to happen? So as soon as that offer comes in, she's calling everybody else who's had any interest in that home, and she's trying to generate another offer so she can take it to sort of highest and best and have that competitive situation. So, yeah. So if you can actually come in closer to the list price, you have a better shot of actually getting the property under agreement. It's difficult. And again, depending on the type of buyer you have, if you have an FHA or VA buyer, they're a little bit lower on the totem pole in terms of, so they even need to be more aggressive, with their offers, to secure the property. Because again, a VA FHA buyer up against a conventional buyer, everything else being equal, the conventional buyer is going to get the property, because there's just less risk for the seller in terms of it not actually getting, so again, educating your buyer, both in terms of kind of what what's going on out there, and also kind of how to view the home inspection. Certainly, is helpful. So let's so now the home inspection's, going, some things came up. Maybe the home has some termite issues. Maybe it has, galvanized plumbing, something that, maybe there's some stuff with the electrical outlet, stuff that you probably never were able to see when you visited the home. Those are items that are certainly open for discussion with the seller. So if you find things that you couldn't have reasonably been expected to have found when you were looking at the home, those are certainly items that are up for negotiation. Now again, whether or not, hey Jan.
Hi, how are you? Sorry to wait.
No problem, have a seat. So just to kind of recap, we're talking about the home inspection. We talked about, preparing your buyer in advance to kind of what, what's going to happen, once the offer is accepted. The idea of the home inspection is more around safety issues and, helping the buyer, understand how the home operates. It's not, a second round of negotiations. That's really not its intent. If things do pop up that never could have been seen, when you were out there showing the home, those are certainly open for, discussion. But again, you signed an as-is contract, so the seller is actually under no obligation really to do anything. And again, you have to kind of, read the tea leaves in terms of, okay, what's going on here. If the seller's open to negotiation, then, they probably don't have another offer behind yours, and they're more apt and maybe are a more motivated seller. What you hope on both sides, the seller side and the buyer, is that people are reasonable. That's, when people are stubborn, that makes it harder to get things accomplished because, one side feels, mistreated. So, when both sides feel good, that's ultimately when, a deal gets consummated and, continues to move forward. So, again, we talked a little bit about, things like termites. So if a house is found to have termites, no buyer should be buying a house that has termites. That's really the seller's responsibility to fix. They don't want to fix it, then, they probably should go find another buyer. Plumbing issues, just things you couldn't have seen that might have come up. And again, hopefully, reasonableness sort of prevails. One of my favorite things is, splitting the difference. Like if you come up and, there seems to be sort of an impasse, let's meet halfway, especially if you're not talking about, a lot of, a couple $1,000, hey, Mr. Seller, Mr. Buyer, let's each contribute $1,000 and sort of, get this done. And, let's not, because what happens is people start focusing on the $2,000 and how the other person is, being mean and taking advantage of them. And, I can, tell you at least 25 times I've heard from a seller, oh, they're being unreasonable. It's only $2,000. And I have to bite my tongue. Well, it's only $2,000 for you too, right? So, it kind of works both ways, but they don't think like that. They get hung up, and it's like their last $2,000, or, I heard when I first started, it's like their communion money, they can't part with it type of thing. So it gets, but the goal of a good real estate, agent is to sort of make that happen, suggest ideas to sort of bring it together, keep it going, and then if you're still at an impasse and the dollar amount is not all that large, what would you do, Jan?
I would pay it.
Well, you wouldn't pay it yourself, but you would ask the other agent possibly.
To chip in.
Right, chip in,
Go
right?
in with me. That's
right, so, we're $2,000 apart and our commission's, $7,000 each.
Exactly.
Would we rather get $6,000 each and be done, or would we rather kind of see this blow up and then, our agent, we got to start all over again, on both sides. So, you always want to have that. You don't want to be digging in your pocket unless you absolutely have to, but sometimes if it's, go ahead.
How would you do that? Would you just charge them less percentage, or would you?
Well, basically it all, so if there's a $2,000 impasse, so instead, So instead of, and the seller's not willing to, to contribute, you would just, both, the commission would be reduced. So if the commission was, in that scenario, $14,000, then it becomes $12,000, and then the seller ends up, kind of net with that $2,000 extra, and the realtors end up, making a little bit less, but they still made money because you never know, like, the seller could change his mind and take the house off the market. The buyer might, anything can happen. I mean, until it's done, it's not done. So, right, until you've given that check at closing, there's always a chance something, can go amok. So, but that's a decision, but you want to kind of have that in your back pocket,
Right.
Or even before you got there, you might say, well, hey, Mr. Seller, Mr. Buyer, why don't you guys each give 500 and the two agents will give 500 and that'll be our 2,000. So you're always
Right.
thinking about, okay, how do I get to the end, and how to kind of keep it together. And then just in terms of, kind of FHA and VA buyers, and it's worth mentioning. So when you have a home inspection and it's a conventional or cash buyer, once the home inspection's done and, any items are agreed upon or any reduction in then you're pretty much done. With an FHA or VA buyer, so in addition to the actual home inspection, the appraiser is going to not only appraise the value of the house, but they're also going to look for any item. They have a checklist of items that kind of don't meet FHA, VA standards, and then those items actually have to be fixed. So they might be wood rot, cracked flooring, broken windows, chipped paint, safety issues. So again, when you're out showing an FHA, VA buyer, you want to remember that, appraiser is going to look at the house, for items that need to pass, and if it doesn't pass, then, the seller has to, fix those things, and then the house has to be re-inspected. Or if it's so bad, you just don't even want to, like, it's just not going to qualify. And if you look on the, on the listing sheet under financing, it usually will talk about if the listing agent thinks it can go FHA or VA. If it's not there, sometimes, that doesn't necessarily, they might have just forgot to check the box. You might call them and just, find out if it is, and like kind of why they did that. But you don't want to be putting your client into a house, again, that, potentially down the road, it's not going to be able to be purchased. So just kind of wanted to sort of throw that in as a side. So that's the home inspection. It's probably the number one thing that actually kills most transactions. And again, if you think about it, so you want to be, one step ahead, always thinking that that's a possibility and figuring out the best way to make sure that that doesn't happen, if at all possible. Because again, you just have to start all over. Typically, sometimes your buyer client is, slightly unhappy because they've had to shell out, maybe $500 for the home inspection and termite, and I mean, it's short money, obviously, in terms of when you're purchasing a home, but it still kind of hurts if you don't go forward.
About how much will a home inspection cost the buyer?
It really varies. I've seen it as low as like $300 and then up to $400. Sometimes, at that higher end of the range, there might be a wind mitigation report issued. There might be a 4-point report issued if the house is over 30 years old. So the home inspectors, and you need those to get insurance, so the home inspector provides those. And then a termite inspection is always advisable, and that's probably right a little bit less than $100. But it's really money well spent. I mean, I always cringe when someone says, "Oh, their client wants to, waive the inspection," and I mean, you certainly can do that, I guess. But it's once you buy it, you own it, and it is, as is. Any other questions? Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you here next week. Thanks so much.
Hearts.
Oh, hearts! We love hearts. Awesome.